He was a multimillionaire, a high-stakes businessman, and a charismatic friend to the stars. But the world would eventually learn that this was merely a polished veneer for a prolific predator and international trafficker. Jeffrey Epstein didn't just live among the elite. He moved effortlessly through their most guarded corridors. He was a man who bridged the gap between presidents and princes, Nobel laureates, and tech billionaires. He dined with arms dealers and media moguls with rumored intelligence ties. But as the world now asks, was it merely charm and wealth that opened those doors? Or was there something significantly darker behind the facade, a mechanism of leverage designed to keep those doors open forever? Today, we are going beyond the headlines to uncover the real Jeffrey Epstein, a man whose life was a masterclass in deception and whose death remains one of the greatest enigmas of the 21st century. The illusion began to shatter on Saturday, July 6, 2019. In a joint FBI-NYPD sting operation, federal agents took a sledgehammer to the door of Epstein's $77 million Manhattan townhouse. And in doing so, they struck the heart of the kingdom he had built. Inside the opulent, high-tech mansion, at the time the most expensive single private home in New York, investigators didn't just find gold leaf and fine art. They found a digital and physical archive of horror, thousands of lurid images, a cache of photos tracking decades of systematic abuse. The house was a temple to his obsessions. Sexualized objects were everywhere. Explicit paintings, provocative statues, massage tables, and stockpiles of lubricant. On the library shelves sat a first edition of Lolita. In his office, the Marquis de Sada's The Misfortunes of Virtue. These weren't just the eccentric collector's items of a wealthy man. They were the blueprints of a lifestyle. But more revealing than the art was the mountain of CDs and hard drives. This was clear evidence of Epstein's perversions and, more critically, potential leverage for blackmail. Framed photographs acted as trophies of his reach. Epstein with tech titans Elon Musk and Bill Gates. In one frame, a dollar bill signed by Gates himself carried a cryptic scrawled message, "I was wrong." The walls were a who's who of global influence. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Richard Branson, Pope John Paul II, Mick Jagger, Fidel Castro, and even the public intellectual Noam Chomsky. All of them posing with a man concealing one of the darkest secrets of the modern era. The townhouse was more than a home. It was a sophisticated surveillance hub. Security cameras dotted room after room, and those were just the ones visible to the naked eye. Victims later testified that the house was wired top to bottom with hidden cameras feeding a central security room. It was impossible not to wonder if Epstein was recording powerful people in compromising situations to ensure his own untouchable status. A New York Times reporter later wrote that Epstein had boasted, off the record, about being a collector of dirt on the world's high and mighty. The house even displayed a large, provocative painting of Bill Clinton in a blue dress and red high heels, a clear, mocking nod to the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Whether it was a joke or a warning, Epstein's sense of humor was as unsettling as his wealth. And that wealth was staggering. The Manhattan townhouse was just the flagship of a vast real estate portfolio. He owned the 70-acre private island Little St. James in the U.S. Virgin Islands, infamously dubbed Epstein Island. There, the rich and powerful mingled freely with beautiful women far from the reach of the law. He owned a Paris apartment near the Arc de Triomphe, a sprawling Palm Beach estate, and the 7,500-acre Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. His modes of transport were central to his operation: 2 Gulfstream jets and a Boeing 727-200, the so-called Lolita Express. Together, his aircraft were worth an estimated $30 million. He kept helicopters and a small fleet of luxury vehicles, from armored Suburbans to Maseratis. Across his properties, high-end furniture and art pointed to serious, systemic money. But how much? His exact net worth was a shifting target, but in 2025, Senator Ron Wyden released a partial summary indicating that banks had flagged more than $1.5 billion in suspicious Epstein-linked transactions. It detailed a network of offshore entities, Russian banks, and Eastern European intermediaries, a money trail that looked less like a hedge fund and more like a clandestine operation. How did a man who started as a simple math teacher, a college dropout who landed a job at the prestigious Dalton School without a degree, become a billionaire fixer. In 2008, following his first arrest for sex crimes in Florida, Epstein received what has since been called the sweetheart deal of the century. Despite an FBI investigation showing he had trafficked dozens of victims to his Palm Beach mansion, he received only an 18-month sentence. But it wasn't prison. Instead of a state facility, he was sent to the Palm Beach County Stockade S Infirmary, a wing that had never been staffed before, but was suddenly filled with people hired specifically for Epstein. A captain ordered his cell door left unlocked. He was granted liberal access to a private room with a TV and a telephone. Many of his victims were recruited from local high schools with the promise of easy money. Yet while they suffered, Epstein was out on work release for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Deputies assigned to him were told to wear business suits and refer to him as the client rather than an inmate. He paid the sheriff's office $128,000 for this bespoke security, while he worked at a fake nonprofit office he had created as a smokescreen. The New York Times would later describe his charity as an image boost built on deception. On those work release days, deputies sat at the reception desk while he met visitors behind closed doors. The logs of those visitors were later destroyed. It was a complete subversion of the U.S. justice system. The reach of Epstein's influence was perhaps best documented in his infamous Little Black Book, maintained by his Palm Beach butler, Alfredo Rodriguez. It contained nearly 1,600 names and 5,000 phone numbers, celebrities, scientists, politicians, and oligarchs. Rodriguez claimed he saw a constant stream of nudity and disturbing content on Epstein's computers, but after trying to sell the book to lawyers for $50,000 instead of giving it to the police, he was sentenced to prison and died of cancer shortly after. He was not the only one in Epstein's orbit to meet a sudden end. In the years following Epstein's first arrest, more than 24 people closely connected to him or his crimes would die, including 3 victims and a former cellmate, fueling the fire of conspiracy. The evidence should have sent him away for life in 2008, but Alexander Acosta, then the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, negotiated a federal non-prosecution agreement that granted Epstein and all potential co-conspirators immunity. The FBI's probe was effectively shut down. Years later, it was reported that Acosta told Trump transition interviewers that he was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. While Acosta later denied this in a 2020 review, the stench of a cover-up remained. Epstein's background offered few clues to his eventual power. Born in 1953 in Brooklyn to a park attendant, he was a smart, nerdy kid who excelled at math and piano. He attended NYU's Quran Institute, but never graduated, yet somehow began teaching at the Dalton School, where the elite sent their children. One theory suggests he lied on his resume. Another suggests he was being groomed. It was at Dalton where he began rubbing shoulders with the fathers of the future power brokers. While some students found him charismatic, others remembered him as sleazy and creepy, often surrounding himself with young girls outside of class. He eventually moved to Wall Street and Bear Stearns, under the wing of Alan Ace Greenberg. He became an expert at finding loopholes, living within the gaps of the law. By 27, he was featured in Cosmopolitan as a financial strategist who only talked to people making over $1 million a year. Money and sex were already his primary drivers. After leaving Bear Stearns, allegedly after being caught in illegal operations, he became a financial bounty hunter, a fixer for the ultra-wealthy. This is where he began carrying fake passports, including an Austrian one that listed his residence as Saudi Arabia. He became a consultant for Adnan Khashoggi, the billionaire arms dealer who played a central role in the Iran-Contra affair and had deep ties to both the CIA and Mossad. By the 1990s, Epstein's wealth exploded. He claimed to handle only clients with over $1 billion, though no one on the street could find his footprint in the markets. His primary known benefactor was Leslie Wexner, the head of Victoria's Secret. Wexner gave Epstein power of attorney over his entire fortune and essentially handed him the keys to his empire, including the Manhattan townhouse, which was transferred for $0. It was a relationship that baffled everyone who knew Wexner. During this time, Epstein partnered with Jean-Luc Brunel, whose modeling agency allegedly served as a front for trafficking. Brunel, like Epstein, would eventually be found dead in a jail cell. Then there was Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of the British media mogul Robert Maxwell. Robert was a suspected triple agent for MI6, the KGB, and Mossad who died mysteriously at sea in 1991. Ghislaine became Epstein's soulmate and social gatekeeper, the woman who introduced him to the British royal family and the upper crust of New York. Together, they cultivated a circle that included Bill Clinton, who flew on Epstein's jet dozens of times, and Donald Trump, who once called Epstein a terrific guy. Epstein's life was an iceberg. What the public saw was the philanthropist, the man flying Nobel winners to conferences, and the host of afternoon teas for the elite in his leather room, decorated with prosthetic eyeballs. But underneath was a honey trap operation. Ari Ben-Menash, a former Israeli intelligence officer, has claimed that Epstein was a Mossad asset, using his properties to record powerful men in compromising positions to ensure they would do the bidding of his handlers. Whether he worked for one agency, many, or just himself, Epstein was a man who understood that information was more valuable than gold. His sudden death in a Manhattan jail cell in 2019, on a night when the cameras failed and the guards slept, ensured that many of the names in his little black book would remain protected. He was a man who lived as an enigma and died as a scandal, a reminder that in the world of the ultra-powerful, the truth is often the first thing to be buried. Jeffrey Epstein was a predator who hid in plain sight, protected by a wall of money and the very people he may have been blackmailing. As we continue to uncover the digital trails and the hidden ledgers, the question isn't just who Jeffrey Epstein was, but who he was doing it for.